What is up, my tricksters? It's your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh superhero. Well, that's gonna have to change a little bit. Hey, what is up, my tricksters? So we are gonna talk about the deck that you guys are seeing in here, but I do have a quick announcement that I want to go over with before we get to the meat and potatoes of the video. I have decided something, and it was a bit of a long debate, and I had some friends give me some input, and I think it is time for the Ben 10,000 of Yu-Gi-Oh! To change. And I'm sure some of you probably have noticed, but I'm changing the name of the channel to Brian 10,000 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, here's the good news. I'm still your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero. The logo is going to stay the same, paying homage to how this channel really started and kicked off. But I want to make this channel more, more me and less of a character that I portrayed. Now, if I do skits, just for transparency's sake, I will just retcon it, and Frank will just call me Brian instead of Ben. I'm still your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero. I still have the watch that turns me into Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters when I need it to. But yeah. It was a tough decision to make, but I've decided I wanted to be Brian 10,000 on all of my content creating goals going forward to make it easier for everyone to find me. So some of y'all don't know, but I also make content in other avenues like Dungeons and Dragons. I don't just make Yu-Gi-Oh content, I make D&D content, I do movie reviews, I do, sometimes I do a death battle. I try to figure out who I think would win if Superman fought, Century. It's just an example. I haven't done that one, but it's as an example, right? And that's a lot of that stuff's all on my geek channel, which is going to be Brian 10,000, or in nerd or geek or something like that. Because that's where all that the D&D stuff's going to happen. Or Brian. The idea is I'll be Brian 10K across all my social medias. Hopefully by the time you guys see this video, I will have everything changed on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, both my YouTube channels. I have a lot of pages that I will be changing the name to. So the idea is to make things more centralized and center everything around the name Brian 10,000 or Brian 10K, for example. The 10K will pay homage to where I really started as a content creator. That's why the logo is going to stay the same as the hourglass inside of the Millennium Puzzle. So the logo is going to stay the same. There will be some other changes too. Like if you go to the merch store, for example, I may also have merch for my other pages. If I start a Patreon, it's going to be for all of me as a content creator, not just a Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creator. So, but don't worry. That's why I have multiple pages, is so that you guys don't have to change what you like. Like, you guys come here because you like me for some reason, right? As a Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creator, the content here isn't gonna change. You're still gonna get deck profiles, the occasional skit. You're still gonna get, when I tell you guys what I think the characters of the anime would play if they played Yu-Gi-Oh! In the real world. Which, by the way, someday that might also avenue into non-Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters. I might say, hey, what 5 decks do I think Spider-Man would play if he played Yu-Gi-Oh! As an example. It's just a thought, but I wanted you guys to know that from now on, I'm Brian 10,000, and I'm your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero. So, here's to the next chapter, right? It's time. Felt like I needed a change, and that was where that comes from. Thanks for if you stuck around through the whole announcement. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's go watch some replay footage. All right, there you have it, guys. That was the replay footage. All right, let's go over the deck. So first and foremost, we got our what I call the branded engine part of this, or the Albaz engines of this. So we got the Dark Magician because I want to make Dragoon, and I want Dragoon to be able to pop something. So we're playing the one Garnet Dark Magician. Well, you know, with these kinds of decks, there's kind of multiple Garnets, but that's a discussion for another day. Then we got our Albaz, which I know it's supposed to be in here for the brand fusion, but I'm not going to lie, guys. There's been a few times where I just normal summon this guy, and he has saved my bacon. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of funny having a Super Poly on legs. And then we got the Spriggan's Kit. This is just to kind of help search for brand fusion, you know. But I didn't want to play too many of the kit because it's not, you know what I mean? Like, we're more of a Shaddoll deck. The branded stuff just kind of is bonus or another avenue to get to Shaddoll cards. So, yeah. So we got the kit in here to kind of, you know, facilitate that. Like, you know, because branded fusion is very much like Shaddoll fusion in that aspect. And then we got our branded fusion, which we also really just kind of use to fill up the graveyard with dolls for the most part. That's how it's used. Or to make Dragoon, Big Daddy Dragoon. Now, if I'm going first, I'm gonna make Shaddolls, a Shaddoll fusion. But if I'm, you know, have the opening to make Dragoon, because I really like I like the artwork of the monster, and let's be honest, he's very useful. Even though I still have my hang-ups with him, you got to acknowledge when he's a tough cookie, and he's still a tough cookie. So sometimes players got to use a lot of resources to get rid of him if they don't have a kaiju. So, and you know, kaijus don't seem to be all that popular right now. Most of the decks I came up across were trap decks, ironically enough. Then we have branded condemnation, because and the reason why this is in here and you don't see the Albaz, the level 8 dragon whose name escapes me, to send this card is because we actually have a lot of mill potential. So this card is all good discard fodder for things like, you know, because you guys can see Super Poly in here and our other cards, which we'll get to, and Dragoon and all these other things. And then if it gets milled off of the other engine that you guys can see in here, yeah, it's just instant pluses. All right, then we got our Shaddoll Beast, draw cards, dragon, popping, you know, bounce back, pop back row. Squamata thins the deck out really fast, is also a man-eater bug. I know that doesn't come up very often, but it has come up for me before. Then we got Ariel. This card is still very much underestimated, but banishing 3 cards out of a graveyard can be very detrimental to an opponent who needs to dig stuff out of there. So, yeah. Then we got Windy. This card is also really good. This is like one of the better Shaddoll monsters. She literally just, you know, puts Beast face down, and I can use him as a chump block or fusion material, whatever it needs to be. Then we got Hedgehog. Most of the time, I'm sending him to the graveyard so I can search for Windy, or, you know, or just whatever. Sometimes I'm just getting filler. Then we have Kios here. Kios is really just for the fusions with Albaz, because like if I go first and get a branded fusion off, this is a really easy way for me to make Winda. And not have to use a lot of resources, as an example. Then we got Shaddoll Fusion, which is much better going second, which is kind of funny, because Branded Fusion is better going first, in my opinion, and Shaddoll Fusion is better going second, you know, so we can kind of force our opponent to, like, you know, negate it and all that stuff. So, yeah. And then we get it back when the Shaddoll Fusion monsters die. Then we got El Shaddoll Fusion. This is just kind of, this can be used in a number of ways to, like, you know, dodge things, like, I one time had a Shaddoll and a Spriggan's Kit here on the field, and they were gonna impermit, so I chained El Shaddoll Fusion. Spriggan's Kit went to the graveyard with a Shaddoll. I got a Shaddoll monster. I got a Winda out, and then I still got Branded Fusion. Now I slowed my play down a little bit, but in the moment, but I needed the Branded Fusion so I could get to the next thing. So it is what it is. Then we got Shaddoll Wreck here. It's good spot removal. It just fits with all the stuff, you know, or Shaddoll Schism. Excuse me, I was looking at the picture when I said that. But yeah, fusing on their turn and getting rid of, you know, its spot removal from time to time. Then we have believe it or not, we are playing a Tearlament engine. I know it seems a little silly, But all of the Shaddolls kick off when we play it. So, and some of the branded cards to do as well. Like I mentioned, the counter trap card, when it gets milled for one of these guys' effects, essentially it's like, oh, get your branded fusion back. And then funny enough, a lot of the branded stuff, like when it comes to fusion with the branded stuff, as long as we have an Albaz in the deck, most of the time the other materials are either in the graveyard or in the banish pile wherever we need them. So it's kind of works. Also, if these guys get sent to the graveyard by card effects, it can be an extra fusion monster. So I like it. And the options are really funny. But we'll get to that in the extra deck. And then we got Salic here. Salic is a negate as well as a mill search, which the mill search is what comes up most of the time for me, to be brutally honest, which is fine. And if we do get to use the negate, that's kind of a bonus too. It just, the negate part hasn't come up for me too often. Speaking of negates, then we got our hand traps, which are Effect Veiler. They are a light monster, which is important for Shaddolls and the branded, as well as a negate and a spellcaster, which is just kind of bonus for me personally. Then we got some of the other cards. We got some for deck thinning. Upstart Goblin, deck thin. Card destruction kicks off the Shaddolls, kicks off the Tearlaments. Love it. I hate it when I'm up against a Dark World deck, but I think I came across one in the entire time I was trying to get replay footage, and then that guy did some weird fuckery and left, so I don't know what that was about. Anyway, then we got Foolish Burial, kicks off the Dolls, could kick off a Tearlament if I already have other material in the graveyard. Call by the Grave, because I hate Ash Blossom. Super Poly, I love this card. I know a lot of players hate this card, I love this card. I cannot tell you how many times it has saved my bacon. And I have so many copies of this card. If I could put Super Poly in all of my decks, the ones I personally own, yeah, I would. Straight up would. Alright, I love this card. I hope this card never gets banned, ever. That's just me talking for me. I don't really care for it when it gets used on me, but when I'm playing a deck like this, if you use Super Poly against me, I'm gonna laugh at you. Yeah. Speaking of cards that are kind of quirky, and this is where we're getting to the quirkiest side of this deck, so if you stuck around this long, you're a champ. We got Rise to Full Height. I know it looks weird. But it has saved my bacon. Okay? I used to play this card a lot in Lightsworn decks that I used to play, and this card is literally my favorite thing. It is easy discard fodder for Super Poly, for card destruction, for Dragoon. It's great set bait. So I can set it, and of course, it could go off at any moment, so a lot of players think that I have something a little more lethal, so they play a little more cautious. It's also, like I said, it's also good set bait. Like, I've seen other players waste destruction cards on the back row, thinking that they were going to get rid of something a lot more lethal, and it's just this. And like I said, and one of the cool things is that everybody forgets how the graveyard effect of this card actually works. So how this thing actually works is really fantastic. Basically what it does is you banish it, you pick a monster, and then your opponent can only attack that monster. But that monster doesn't have to stick around. It just means for this battle phase, they can only attack that monster. So if they destroy it before the battle phase, they don't get to attack at all. That's how this card works. So I use it as a way to protect my life points. Because I often end up with having this guy, right? Lubellion is the primary one I like to go for, so I can make Dragoon. So one of the things that ends up happening is they can only hit Lubellion, and sometimes I've super polyed, or they destroy it with whatever, just name an effect that destroys, and then they don't get to attack, and the frustration on so many people's play. I've been singing the praises of this card forever, and people still fall for it. Dude, this card is like a decade old almost. You guys know that next year, this card, I'm pretty sure this card came out in 2014 or 2012, somewhere 2012, somewhere around that. This card's a 10-year-old card, still puts in work for blocking attacks. That's great. I have blocked many an OTK and have pissed off many an opponent. And then we have the Breakthrough skill. This is the last card of the deck, and this card pisses people off too. Oh, do I love this card. Alright, so Breakthrough skill is like that is a decade old, another decade old card. This was imperm before infinite impermanence existed. Basically, you set it, you negate a card on your opponent's turn, and then in the graveyard, and then on your turn, it's a quick effect negate, but only on yours, unfortunately. I wish you could just be imperm in the graveyard, but, you know, Konami's not going to give me all the things that I personally want. So, yeah, Breakthrough skill is like, on my turn, I can banish it and negate an opponent's card. It's a twofer. If I draw it and it's, you know, if it gets milled, it's not the end of the world. It's still a useful card. Kind of fills in the gaps where Effect Veiler is, in a manner of speaking. Yeah. Alright, then we're going to go to the extra deck here, and you can ignore the sideboard. The sideboard's very generic, by the way. It's just something that I use, what I came across. You don't have to use what I use. Okay. We got Red Dark Dragoon. I have a love-hate relationship with this card. I like it because Dark Magician, but I hate it because I still feel like it's a little bit like... it's a little too busted, in my opinion. I know, and for the record, I know it's power crept. Okay, guys, I understand that this card is power crept. So, but you know, part of my brain is going yeah, every time I have to play this card. So there's a part of my brain that hates this thing, to be honest. Yeah, and then we got Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon. Some people don't read the fine print on some of these cards, by the way. Non-targeting removal, really cool. If it leaves the field, it blows up the field. There was a Trap Tricks player I played against who learned the hard way that if you made a temporary banish and this guy came back and nuked their field. Anyway, then we got Shaddoll Construct, sending Shaddoll cards. Most of the time, you end up sending like a Shaddoll Schism. So you basically, or you know, so you can, when this guy dies, you can make another fusion. Starting Venom Dragon, 2 dark monsters. That's it. That's pretty simple. There's a lot of darkness going around. Yeah. And then we got Predaplant Dragostapelia. This is, remember how I mentioned like how certain things like that get milled with these guys, the Tearlaments. I could not speak that word for the life of me. This is one of those. This is one of their targets. Because this guy just requires a dark monster fusion. So if I have fuse for anything earlier in the game, and then one of the 3 Tearlament monsters goes to the graveyard, I can cycle back an important fusion card and the Tearlament, and then I get a negate. As well as it's also a super poly target. So it's kind of a double win there. I have a super poly target, and I have a Tearlament's target in the same monster. Then we have Lebellion and Albion. These are the cards you use to go into getting Dragoon or Mirror Jade. It can be used for going for the Shaddoll monsters. It just, excuse me, it doesn't come up for me that often. And then of course, you know, Albion, when it goes to the graveyard during the end phase, you get to search Branded Fusion. Love that, really handy effect. We do play 2 Ap Cologne here. I wanted to call him Al Capone. The Ap Cologne here is a negate, and it's an on-summon negate, so if we use it with Schism, we can negate something on the opposite side of the field. And then, of course, I do play triple Winda in this deck. It's almost a Winda Turbo strategy, to be honest, because Winda slows everybody down, because right now everything is back to special summoning when it comes to summoning monsters again. We don't have a very normal summon reliant deck in the fold right now. It's not to say that the previous ones don't exist. It's just they're not as powerful as they used to be, like the bird deck. I can't remember what Flunderies. Flunderies, you know, since they lost the statue, they're not the threat they were. So Winda won't hurt them, but you know they can't hurt us anymore. So since they're not really the threat they used to be, and nobody's really playing them anymore because they can't get the statue out for free anymore. So with the absence of normal summon-based decks, Winda becomes a very powerful floodgatey monster again, and you know she's got to be decent 22 stat. She even gives us back our Shaddoll spells and traps. So yeah, and then the last one we have another super poly target, Mud Dragon of the Swamp. just because, you know, it's just, oh, two monsters, same attribute, different type. Yeah, let's do it. Threw Poly it up. And then I also can make this with these guys too if I had to. Not that I would want to do that, but like if I was in a position where making window was a bad idea, you know, because it would lock me out of my own fusion goals, then yeah, I might be tempted to make a mud dragon with like one of the dark Shaddolls instead of making window. Anyway, guys, this was my goofy Shaddoll branded deck. It still works. It's pretty good. All I did was lower the brandeds and centralize the strategy, and then like I actually found a purpose of using these guys as a kind of as an engine. So it's very reminiscent of like old like Shaddoll Lightsworn kind of builds, where like you know, they would use the Lightsworns as ways to like trigger off the dolls. So it's like that, only these guys can be used for making window instead of construct, so it works out really well. And then of course I get to play cards that I really like Rise of Full Height, which is a card I always love playing in any deck that I can get away with playing it. It's just kind of one of my favorite cards. It's a quirky one, but it's one of my favorites. Anyway, guys, if you're new to the Brian 10,000 of Yu-Gi-Oh channel, you know, like and subscribe. And if you're an old person and you made it this far in the video, thanks for sticking around. I hope that hope for the good things for this new chapter in my content creating life. Peace, guys.